On May 22, 1992, America held its breath. After accompanying millions of American families for 3 decades, Johnny Carson delivered his final good night. There were no fireworks, no lavish farewell parties, and no extravagant tribute specials of the kind Hollywood typically reserves for legends. Johnny stepped out of the gilded cage known as The Tonight Show with a silence that was almost unbelievable. After that night, he seemed to vanish from the entertainment map. For the next 12 years, until his death in 2005, Johnny Carson carried out a retreat unlike anything the entertainment world had ever witnessed. He gave no interviews, appeared at no major award ceremonies, and never attended charity galas. In a Hollywood where visibility is everything, Johnny chose absence as his declaration of independence. The few people who happened to spot him aboard his boat off the coast of Malibu noticed something remarkable. For the first time in decades, the face that had long been tightened by pressure appeared relaxed, peaceful, and content. If Johnny Carson's departure in 1992 was a declaration of freedom, its roots lay deep within the shadows of his childhood in Iowa. Most fans saw the smooth, sharp-witted entertainer on television, but few realized that his humor was not born from happiness. It was a defense mechanism. His mother, Ruth, was not the kind of parent who offered warm embraces or words of praise. She was described as a cold woman who maintained an invisible distance from her son. In young Johnny's mind, her silence felt like a sentence. He came to believe that unless he did something extraordinary, he would be completely forgotten within his own home. At age 12, in the cramped confines of his bedroom, Johnny turned to magic. He wasn't simply learning tricks to entertain people, he was learning how to command attention. Every gasp of amazement, every burst of laughter from strangers filled a void inside him. Their laughter became his mirror, proof that he existed. That was his first tragedy, a child who learned to trade emotional authenticity for the approval of strangers. The funny mask was born. For decades afterward, Johnny Carson used that very mask to climb to the summit of American television. The more he made millions laugh, the more real he felt. Yet when he stepped off the stage, he realized he had drifted so far from his true self that even those closest to him could no longer reach his heart. The quiet life he embraced after 1992 was, in reality, one final attempt by a man searching for himself. He was not running from the world. He was trying to rediscover the person he had left behind in that bedroom in Iowa half a century earlier. Johnny Carson's life was a heartbreaking paradox. He possessed the key to the hearts of 30 million viewers every night, yet he remained completely lost within his own home. Fame was never a free gift. For Johnny, it became a gilded cage that imprisoned him in profound loneliness. The women who passed through his life, across 4 failed marriages, shared the same bitter realization. Being married to Johnny Carson was not like being in an ordinary relationship. It was an unwinnable competition. Once they entered his life, they discovered they were competing with 30 million strangers sitting in front of television screens for his love, attention, and time. And in that battle for his heart, the audience always won. The tragedy reached its peak in the invisible distance between Johnny and his children. His son Richard later left behind haunting reflections, describing his father as physically present but emotionally absent. It was a cruel definition of loneliness. Johnny could effortlessly deliver brilliant jokes that left the entire nation laughing within seconds, yet sit silently and detached at his own child's school performance. How could a man so capable of connecting with an audience become so disconnected from his own family? Perhaps because television followed a script. Every reaction could be anticipated and controlled. There, he felt safe. But within his family, where genuine emotions demanded genuine responses, he felt powerless. The bitter jokes he made on The Tonight Show about his divorces were not merely entertainment, they were cries for help. The only form of confession he felt capable of making. The only place where he truly felt understood was not in a bedroom or around a dinner table, but in front of a camera. He had sold his soul to comedy, and the price was the collapse of the most sacred bonds a person can have. By the late 1980s, Johnny Carson's polished appearance remained unchanged, but inside he was exhausted beyond measure. After more than 30 years of continuous broadcasting, The fatigue he faced was no longer something that could be cured with a good night's sleep or a short vacation. It was the exhaustion of a spirit worn down by the relentless pressure to always be the smartest, funniest, and most charming person in the room. The chair at The Tonight Show had once felt like a throne. Now it felt like a cage. He saw himself as a ship that had sailed at full speed across the ocean of fame, with every nerve in his body now crying out from overload. NBC, the powerful television network behind his success, went into a state of panic when Johnny officially announced his decision to leave in 1991. To them, Johnny Carson was more than a host. He was an asset worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They refused to believe he would truly walk away. Top executives flew out to meet him, offering contracts with unimaginable sums and privileges unprecedented in television history, all in an effort to persuade him to stay for a few more years. But Johnny did something almost no one in the entertainment industry would dare do. He turned it all down. He turned down enormous appearance fees for reunion specials, declined invitations to major events such as the Super Bowl, and even refused a brief guest appearance on David Letterman's show, a gesture that virtually any other celebrity would have embraced to keep their name in the spotlight. Johnny had simply grown tired of trying to please the world. He had seen through the vanity of ratings and the artificiality of endless praise. After 3 decades, he realized that he had gradually disappeared behind the oversized shadow of Johnny Carson, the television persona. To save what remained of his true self, he had no choice but to walk away from everything, whether the world understood or accepted it. When the studio doors finally closed behind him, Johnny Carson was not merely leaving a television program. He was leaving behind an entire identity he had carried for more than 30 years. At age 66, when he stepped away from Hollywood's blinding spotlight and into the quiet serenity of Malibu, he looked into a mirror and, for the first time in half a century, saw a man who felt unfamiliar yet genuine. He came to a painful realization. The world had never truly loved Johnny Carson. People loved the host. They loved the clever man on television. But they knew nothing of the lonely boy in Iowa who adored magic tricks, nor the trembling man trying to survive the wreckage of failed marriages. Fame was not a protective cloak. It was a burden that had worn away his humanity until very little remained. In the silence of his secluded years, Johnny began learning how to be an ordinary person. He found comfort in things he had never had time to appreciate before. The gentle sound of waves striking the hull of his boat off the Malibu coast, the salty scent of the ocean breeze, and old books opened not for research, scripts, or speeches, but simply for pleasure. He was no longer the king of late night. He was simply Johnny, a man learning how to breathe without the expectations of 30 million viewers resting on his shoulders. Yet his greatest awakening came through a deeply human act, becoming an unseen contributor to David Letterman's success. Every morning, in the privacy of his reading room, Johnny continued writing the sharp jokes and brilliant wordplay that had once made him a master of television comedy. He quietly sent them to Letterman. When he later watched those jokes on television and saw America laughing once again, he no longer felt the emptiness that had haunted him for years. Instead, a small, private smile appeared on his face. That was when he discovered the meaning of true freedom. Happiness does not come from owning the laughter. It comes from creating joy without needing anyone to know your name. He surrendered the desire for recognition, the addiction that had shaped his entire life, in exchange for the peace of becoming an observer. In his final years, Johnny Carson no longer needed the approval of crowds to feel that he existed. He had completed the most difficult journey any artist can undertake, overcoming himself, shedding his pride, and rediscovering the pure soul he had lost as a young boy practicing magic tricks in his bedroom. In that silence, he was no longer a star. At last, he had become a complete human being. In 2005, at the age of 79, Johnny Carson passed away from emphysema. In an industry built upon spectacle, where death is often transformed into televised tributes filled with tears and flowers, Johnny chose a different exit. He left behind no extravagant final instructions, no public funeral, and no eloquent eulogies celebrating his greatness. Instead, He followed his final wishes with the same decisiveness that marked his departure from television in 1992. He was cremated and his ashes were scattered at sea. That final act became the last brushstroke in a haunting portrait. By having his ashes scattered in the ocean, the place where he had found peace during his final years, Johnny affirmed that he did not wish to belong to any monument or legacy. He wanted to dissolve into the horizon, becoming one with the waves he loved so dearly, beyond the reach of judgment, expectation, or public scrutiny. Looking back on his life, we encounter an unresolved paradox. Johnny's greatest gift, his ability to connect with tens of millions of people through conversation, was the very thing that severed his connection with those closest to him. He taught America how to laugh, yet forgot how to love his own children. He established the standard for modern television, while his true self remained lost behind the masks he spent a lifetime creating. The cost of glory in Johnny Carson's case was not merely money or personal freedom. It was the sacrifice of self-respect and family happiness for the fleeting laughter of strangers. His story is more than television history. It is a cautionary tale. When you become the person the world wants to see, you risk losing the person you were meant to become. Johnny Carson is gone, but the laughter he left behind still echoes. Yet behind those waves of applause, we can still glimpse the silhouette of a lonely man who spent his entire life entertaining the world, only to find genuine peace when he finally chose to turn away from it forever. You have now traveled with me through the rise and fall of Johnny Carson's remarkable life, a chapter in the project Tragedy Behind the Glory. I hope this journey has revealed a different side of Johnny, not merely the king of television, but a human being carrying deep emotional wounds. If this story has touched you, feel free to share your thoughts. Do you believe Johnny Carson's sacrifices were worth what he gave to television, or was it a tragedy that never should have happened? Leave your opinion in the comments below. Who would you like to see featured next? Tell us their name, and we'll begin a new journey together.